The spotlight burned hotter than the Georgia sun, and Ezra felt every degree of it on his skin. He stood center stage, the hem of his makeshift gown a cascade of thrifted silk and sequins brushing the scuffed wood beneath his feet. His voice, clear and soaring, carried the notes of "Part of Your World" through the cramped theater. Each word a confession he'd never dared speak aloud until tonight. Ezra Kane had always been an outsider in Willow Creek, a sleepy town where pickup trucks outnumbered dreams and conformity was the unwritten law. At 24, he'd spent years hiding his voice, his heart, his truth behind a mask of quiet compliance. But tonight, in this crumbling community theater, he was no longer the boy who fixed cars at his father's garage. He was Ariel. He was Cinderella. He was every princess he'd ever loved, singing with a courage that felt like it could shatter the world. The audience was a patchwork of faces, farmers in flannel, churchgoers clutching programs, teenagers sneaking glances at their phones. Some leaned forward, captivated by Ezra's voice. Others whispered, their eyes narrowing at the boy who dared to wear a dress and sing like he belonged in a Disney castle. In the front row sat Governor Daniel Warwick, a man whose name was synonymous with power in Georgia. His presence was a rarity. Willow Creek wasn't exactly a campaign hotspot, but rumors swirled that he was here to gauge the town's pulse before a controversial new bill hit the state legislature. Ezra's heart pounded as he reached the song's climax, his voice climbing higher, trembling with the weight of everything he'd kept buried. He'd grown up memorizing these melodies in secret, singing into a hairbrush in his bedroom while his father shouted at the TV downstairs. Disney songs had been his escape, his rebellion, his way of dreaming beyond the confines of a town that didn't understand boys like him. Boys who loved other boys. Boys who felt more at home in a ball gown than a baseball cap. As the final note hung in the air, the theater fell silent. Ezra's chest heaved, his eyes scanning the crowd for any sign that he'd reached them. Then, from the back, a single clap broke the stillness. Then another. Soon, half the room erupted in applause, while the other half sat stone-faced, their arms crossed. Ezra's gaze landed on Governor Warwick, whose expression was unreadable, his hands still resting in his lap. Backstage, Ezra's best friend, Lila Torres, was waiting, her dark curls bouncing as she rushed to him. "You were unreal out there," she whispered, her brown eyes gleaming with pride. "I swear, I saw Mrs. Henderson crying, and she's tougher than a $2 steak." Ezra managed a shaky laugh, pulling off the costume's tiara. "Yeah, well, I also saw half the room looking like they wanted to burn me at the stake." Lila squeezed his arm. "Let them stare. You just gave them something they'll never forget." The theater was part of Willow Creek's annual arts festival, a modest event that drew locals and a few curious outsiders. Ezra had auditioned on a whim, egged on by Lila, who'd spent weeks helping him sew his costume. The director, a wiry woman named Ms. Clara, had been thrilled to cast him, calling his performance a revelation. But Ezra knew the risks. Willow Creek wasn't known for embracing difference, and the governor's presence only heightened the stakes. A new bill, one that would restrict discussions of gender and sexuality in schools, was gaining traction, and Warwick was its loudest champion. As Ezra changed into jeans and a hoodie, his phone buzzed. A text from his younger brother. "Caleb, Dad's pissed. Says you're embarrassing the family. Be careful coming home." Ezra's stomach twisted. His father, Tom Kane, was a man of few words but strong opinions, and Ezra's performance tonight would be a betrayal in his eyes. Tom had never understood his son's love for theater, for music, for anything that didn't fit the mold of a real man. Lila noticed his expression. "Caleb?" she asked. "Yeah. Dad's not exactly throwing me a parade." "Screw him," Lila said fiercely. "You don't need his approval. You've got me. You've got Ms. Clara. You've got half that audience out there who loved you." Ezra forced a smile, but doubt gnawed at him. He'd poured his soul into tonight. But what if it wasn't enough? What if the town's judgment, his father's anger, or the governor's politics drowned out his voice? As they stepped outside, the night air was thick with the scent of magnolias and gasoline. The theater's marquee flickered, casting a dim glow over the parking lot. Ezra froze when he saw a figure leaning against a sleek black car, his suit crisp despite the humid evening. Governor Warwick. His silver hair caught the light, and his eyes locked onto Ezra's with an intensity that made his breath catch. Ezra Kane. Right. Warwick's voice was smooth, measured, like he was addressing a crowd instead of a single person. That was quite a performance. Ezra's throat tightened. Thank you, sir, he managed, unsure if it was a compliment or a prelude to something worse. Warwick stepped closer, his gaze never wavering. You've got courage, son, more than most people in this town. He paused, as if weighing his next words. But courage can be dangerous in a place like this. You understand that, don't you? Before Ezra could respond, Warwick turned and slid into his car, the engine purring to life. As the taillights disappeared into the night, Ezra felt a chill that had nothing to do with the breeze. Lila grabbed his hand, her grip fierce. He's just trying to scare you, she said. Don't let him. But as Ezra walked home, the governor's words echoed in his mind, mingling with the applause, the whispers, and the memory of his own voice ringing out, unshackled, for the first time in his life. The gravel crunched under Ezra's sneakers as he approached the Kane family's double-wide trailer, its faded blue siding barely visible in the moonlight. The porch light was off Tom's subtle way of saying Ezra wasn't welcome tonight. Inside, the TV blared a football game, and Ezra could picture his father slouched in his recliner, a beer in hand, his jaw tight with disapproval. Ezra hesitated at the door, his heart racing. He'd faced a theater full of strangers, but confronting his father felt like stepping into a lion's den. Caleb's warning buzzed in his pocket, a reminder of the storm waiting inside. He took a deep breath, pushed the door open, and stepped into the dim living room. Tom didn't look up. You think you're some kind of star now? His voice was low, edged with venom, prancing around in a dress, singing like a damn girl. You know what people are saying. Ezra's throat burned. I was just being myself. Dad. Yourself. Tom snorted, finally turning to face him. His eyes, bloodshot from long hours at the garage, bore into Ezra. You're my son, not some fairy tale princess. You're making us a laughingstock. Caleb, perched on the couch, shot Ezra a sympathetic glance but stayed silent. At 16, he'd learned to navigate their father's temper by keeping his head down. Ezra envied that skill. I'm not trying to embarrass you, Ezra said, his voice steady despite the ache in his chest. I need to do this. For me. Tom stood, his broad frame filling the room. For you. What about this family? What about me? Working my ass off to keep a roof over your head. You think you can just throw it all away for some stage nonsense? The argument escalated, words flying like shrapnel. Ezra tried to explain the music, the costume, the feeling of finally being seen, but Tom wasn't listening. When Ezra mentioned the governor's cryptic words, Tom's face darkened further. Warwick was there. He spat. Great. Now the whole damn state's gonna know my son's a freak. The word hit Ezra like a punch. He stumbled back, grabbing his jacket. I'm not staying here tonight, he muttered, heading for the door. Ezra. Wait. Caleb called, but Tom's voice drowned him out. Let him go. Maybe he'll figure out how to be a man. Ezra walked for hours, the night air cooling the tears on his cheeks. He ended up at Lila's apartment, a cramped but cozy space above the town's only coffee shop. She didn't ask questions, just handed him a mug of chamomile tea and let him crash on her couch. As he lay there, staring at the ceiling, Ezra replayed the night, the applause, the governor's warning, his father's anger. He felt like he was standing on a fault line, the ground shifting beneath him. The next morning, Lila dragged him to the coffee shop downstairs, where the festival buzz was still alive. Posters for Ezra's performance were taped to the windows, and a few locals whispered as they passed. 1. A middle-aged woman named Diane, who ran the bakery, stopped to congratulate him. "You've got a gift, Ezra," she said, her smile genuine. "Don't let this town dim your light." But not everyone was so kind. At the counter, a group of men in trucker hats shot him dirty looks, muttering words like shame and unnatural. Ezra kept his head down, but their voices followed him like shadows. Lila nudged him. "Ignore them. They're just scared of anything that doesn't fit their tiny worldview." "Easy for you to say," Ezra muttered. "You're not the one they're staring at." She raised an eyebrow. "I'm a Puerto Rican girl in a town full of rednecks. Trust me, I know stares." Ezra managed a small smile, but the weight of the previous night lingered. He couldn't shake the governor's words. Courage can be dangerous, or the fear that his performance had set something bigger in motion. That afternoon, Ms. Clara called him back to the theater for a rehearsal. The festival was hosting a closing showcase, and she wanted Ezra to perform again, this time with a medley of Disney songs. "You're the heart of this show," she told him. "People need to see you." Ezra wasn't so sure. The thought of stepping back into that spotlight felt like tempting fate. But Ms. Clara's faith in him was a lifeline, and he agreed. As they worked through the set list, he noticed a flyer on the bulletin board, a town hall meeting hosted by Governor Warwick to discuss the new bill. The date was the same as the festival's closing night. Coincidence? Lila asked, her tone skeptical. "Doubt it," Ezra said. He felt a spark of defiance ignite in his chest. If Warwick was watching, Ezra wouldn't back down. Not now. That evening, he and Lila walked to the town square, where a small crowd had gathered for an impromptu festival event, a street fair with food stalls and live music. Ezra spotted Caleb there, standing awkwardly near a cotton candy stand. "You okay?" Ezra asked, approaching him. Caleb shrugged, his eyes darting around. "Dad's still mad. But I thought you were awesome last night. I didn't say it before, but I'm proud of you." Ezra's heart swelled. "Thanks, kid. Means a lot." As they talked, Ezra noticed a man watching from across the square. Not Warwick, but someone in a suit, his phone pressed to his ear. The man's eyes lingered on Ezra too long, and a chill ran down his spine. Lila followed his gaze. "Who's that?" "No idea," Ezra said, "but I don't like it." The festival's street fair pulsed with energy, but Ezra couldn't shake the unease that clung to him like damp air. The man in the suit had vanished into the crowd, but his presence lingered in Ezra's mind, a reminder that his performance had drawn attention maybe more than he'd bargained for. Lila, ever the optimist, dragged him toward a stage where a local band was playing, her laughter cutting through his thoughts. "Come on, easy, dance with me," she said, tugging his arm. "You can't let some creepy guy ruin your night." Ezra tried to lose himself in the music, but his eyes kept scanning the crowd. He spotted familiar faces: Diane from the bakery, Ms. Clara waving from a booth, but also strangers who stared a little too long, their expressions unreadable. Willow Creek wasn't a place where secrets stayed buried, and Ezra's performance had stirred something up. As the band transitioned to a slower song, Ezra's gaze landed on a new face, a young man about his age, leaning against a lamppost. He had warm brown skin, close-cropped hair, and eyes that sparkled with quiet confidence. He wore a leather jacket over a faded t-shirt, and when he caught Ezra looking, he smiled a slow, easy smile that made Ezra's heart stutter. "Who's that?" Lila whispered, nudging him. "No clue," Ezra said, but he couldn't look away. The stranger pushed off the lamppost and approached, his stride casual but deliberate. "Hey," the stranger said, his voice smooth as honey. "You're the guy from the theater last night, right? The one who sang like he was born for it." Ezra blushed, caught off guard. Yeah, that's me. Ezra." "I'm Marcus," the stranger said, extending a hand. His grip was firm. His eyes locked on Ezra's with an intensity that felt both thrilling and unnerving. "I'm just passing through, but I caught your show. You've got something special." "Thanks," Ezra said, his voice softer than he intended. Marcus's presence was magnetic, and for a moment, the weight of the town's judgment lifted. Lila, ever the wingwoman, grinned. "I'm gonna grab some lemonade. You two chat." She winked at Ezra before slipping away. Marcus chuckled. "She's subtle." "Yeah, that's Lila," Ezra said, relaxing slightly. "So, you're not from around here?" "Nah, I'm from Atlanta. Here for the festival. Mostly to scout talent for a music program I run. But your performance, it wasn't just talent. It was raw. Real." Ezra's cheeks warmed again. "I just sang what I've always wanted to. Didn't expect anyone to care." "People care," Marcus said, his tone serious. "Maybe not all of them, but the ones who do. They'll remember you." They talked for hours, the fair fading into the background. Marcus shared stories of Atlanta's vibrant art scene, of open mic nights and queer-friendly spaces where Ezra's voice would be celebrated, not judged. Ezra found himself opening up, telling Marcus about the Disney songs that had been his refuge, the costume he'd sewn with Lila, the fear that kept him awake at night. Marcus listened, his eyes never leaving Ezra's, and for the first time in years, Ezra felt truly seen. As the fair wound down, Marcus scribbled his number on a napkin. "If you're ever in Atlanta, look me up. I'd love to hear you sing again." Ezra tucked the napkin into his pocket, his heart racing. "I will." But the moment was shattered when Ezra spotted the man in the suit again, this time closer, his phone camera aimed in their direction. Marcus noticed too, his expression darkening. "Friend of yours?" "No," Ezra said, his voice tight. "I think he's with the governor." Marcus's jaw tightened. "Warwick's people. They've been sniffing around events like this, looking for ammo to push that bill. Be careful, Ezra." The warning echoed Governor Warwick's words from the night before, and Ezra felt the fault line beneath him shift again. He said goodbye to Marcus, promising to text. But as he and Lila headed back to her apartment, the unease returned. The man in the suit had disappeared, but Ezra couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. The next day, rehearsals at the theater were tense. Ms. Clara had heard about the town hall meeting and Warwick's involvement. "He's using this town as a test case," she told Ezra. "Your performance is a lightning rod. People are talking, and not all of it's good." Ezra nodded, his throat tight. He'd wanted to be seen, but not like this, not as a symbol in a political game he didn't fully understand. As he practiced his medley, he poured his fear into the music, letting each note carry the weight of his dreams and doubts. That evening, Lila showed him a post on X from a local account. "Boy in a dress sings Disney songs at festival. Governor Warwick in attendance. Is this what Willow Creek stands for?" The comments were a mix of support and vitriol, with some calling Ezra brave and others calling him worse. One comment mentioned a petition to ban inappropriate performances at future festivals. "They're talking about you like you're a problem to be solved," Lila said, her voice shaking with anger. "This is bigger than just you now." Ezra stared at the screen, his heart sinking. He'd wanted to sing, to be himself, but he hadn't expected to spark a fire. And yet, as he thought of Marcus's smile, of Caleb's quiet support, of the applause that had drowned out the silence, he felt that spark of defiance flare again. He wasn't done yet. The theater smelled of old wood and fresh paint as Ezra stepped onto the stage for the final rehearsal before the festival's closing showcase. His costumian new gown, this one a deep emerald green with silver accents, felt like armor. Each stitch a reminder of the hours he and Lila had spent creating it. But as he ran through his medley, his voice faltered. The weight of the town's scrutiny, the governor's warning, and the mysterious man in the suit pressed down on him like a storm cloud. "Ms. Clara noticed. "Ezra, you're holding back," she said after rehearsal, her glasses slipping down her nose. "You were fearless opening night. Where's that fire?" Ezra hesitated, then told her about the ex-post. The petition, the man watching him at the fair. "Ms. Clara's face hardened. "This town's always been afraid of what it doesn't understand. But you're not just singing for them. You're singing for you. For everyone who's ever felt like they don't belong." Her words stayed with him as he left the theater. But they didn't erase the fear. He texted Marcus, needing a distraction. "Rehearsal was rough. Mine's a mess." Marcus replied almost instantly, "You've got this. Come to Atlanta after the festival. I'll show you a place where you can be you. No apologies." The idea of Atlanta, a place where he could sing without judgment, was intoxicating. But Willow Creek was home, flawed as it was, and running felt like giving up. Ezra was still wrestling with the thought when he got a call from Caleb. "Dad's at the bar," Caleb said, his voice low. "He's talking to some guys about you. They're mad about the petition. Said you're stirring up trouble." Ezra's stomach dropped. "What did he say?" "He didn't defend you," Caleb admitted. "Just let them talk." "I'm sorry." "Easy." Ezra hung up, his hands shaking. He'd always known his father's love came with conditions, but the betrayal still cut deep. Lila, sensing his mood when he reached her apartment, suggested they go to the town hall meeting that night. "We need to know what Warwick's planning," she said. "If he's targeting you, we need to be ready." The town hall was packed, the air thick with tension. Governor Warwick stood at a podium in the community center, his polished demeanor a stark contrast to the restless crowd. Ezra and Lila slipped into the back, trying to blend in. Warwick spoke about protecting family values and preserving community standards. His words carefully coded but unmistakable. "The bill," he said, "would ensure schools remained safe spaces free from confusing influences." Ezra's heart pounded as he listened. The bill wasn't just about school sit, was about silencing people like him, erasing their stories. When Warwick opened the floor for questions, Diane from the bakery stood up. "Governor, what does this bill mean for kids like my nephew, who's just trying to figure out who he is? Are you saying he doesn't belong?" The room murmured, some in support, others in dissent. Warwick's smile was tight. "We're not here to exclude anyone," he said, "but we need to prioritize what's best for our communities." Ezra couldn't stay silent. He stood, his voice trembling but clear. "What's best for the community is letting people be who they are. I sang at the festival because it's who I am. Why does that scare you?" The room went quiet. Warwick's eyes locked onto Ezra's, and for a moment, Ezra thought he saw a flicker of something, doubt, maybe, or recognition. But then Warwick's expression hardened. "Young man, I admire your passion, but we're talking about order, not chaos. We need rules to keep things clear." The crowd erupted, some cheering, others booing. Lila grabbed Ezra's arm, pulling him toward the exit as the room grew chaotic. Outside, she hugged him fiercely. "You just called out the governor in front of everyone. You're insane, and I love it." But Ezra didn't feel brave. He felt exposed, like he'd painted a target on his back. As they walked home, he noticed the man in the suit again, this time across the street, his phone out. Ezra's pulse raced. "He's following me," he whispered. Lila's eyes narrowed. "We need to find out who he is. Tomorrow, we're doing some digging." The next day, They enlisted Caleb's help. He was a whiz with computers, and after some reluctant prodding, he agreed to search online for anything connecting the man to Warwick. It didn't take long to find a lead. A photo from a campaign event showed the man, identified as Nathan Cole, Warwick's chief of staff. Caleb dug deeper, finding posts on X suggesting Cole was tasked with monitoring festival events for potential controversies. "He's been watching you since opening night," Lila said, her voice grim. "Warwick's building a case, and you're the centerpiece." Ezra felt the walls closing in. The showcase was tomorrow, and with it, his chance to sing again or to become a scapegoat. He thought of Marcus, of Atlanta, of Escape. But he also thought of Caleb, of Diane's nephew, of every kid in Willow Creek who might need to see someone like him stand tall. "I'm not running," he told Lila. "I'm singing tomorrow, and I'm going to be louder than ever." The morning of the festival's closing showcase dawned gray and heavy, the sky threatening rain. Ezra woke on Lila's couch, his dreams a tangle of music and menace. He checked his phone, another text from Marcus. "Can't stop thinking about you. Kill it tonight." The words warmed him, but they couldn't erase the dread pooling in his gut. At the theater, Ms. Clara was a whirlwind, adjusting lights and barking orders at volunteers. When she saw Ezra, she pulled him aside. "I heard about the town hall," she said. "You've got more guts than anyone I know. But tonight's going to be tough. Warwick's people are coming, and they're not here to clap." Ezra nodded, his throat tight. He'd seen the X posts that morning, more calls to ban his performance, some laced with slurs. But there were others too, from people he didn't know, praising his courage, sharing their own stories. One, from a teenager in a neighboring town. "Read, I'm trans, and seeing you sing gave me hope. Don't stop." Ezra saved the message, a small anchor in the storm. Rehearsal was grueling, but Ezra pushed through, his voice stronger with each run-through. He'd chosen a medley that started with Reflection and ended with Let It Go, songs that felt like pieces of his soul. As he sang, he imagined Marcus in the audience, Caleb sneaking in to watch, even his father, somewhere deep down, listening. Lila arrived with news. She and Caleb had tracked Nathan Cole's movement, been seen meeting with local business owners, likely rallying support for Warwick's bill. "He's got a whole operation," Lila said. "They're filming tonight, probably to spin your performance into something they can use." Ezra's stomach churned. "What do I do?" "Just sing anyway." "Exactly," Lila said. "You sing, and you show them who you are. They can't twist that." As the theater filled that evening, the air crackled with anticipation. Ezra peeked through the curtain, spotting familiar faces: Diane, Ms. Clara, Caleb in the back. Marcus was there too, near the front, his smile a beacon. But so was Nathan Cole, his phone ready. And beside him, Governor Warwick, his expression unreadable. Ezra's hands shook as he slipped into his gown, the emerald fabric catching the backstage lights. Lila adjusted his tiara, her eyes fierce. "You're a damn prince tonight," she said. "Go show them." The lights dimmed, and Ezra stepped onto the stage. The spotlight found him, and for a moment, the world was silent. Then he began to sing, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. Reflection poured out, raw and aching, every note a plea for acceptance. The audience leaned in, some visibly moved, others stiff with disapproval. As he transitioned to Let It Go, Ezra felt the music take over, his fear burning away. He sang of freedom, of casting off shame, and the theater seemed to shrink, leaving only him and the melody. When he hit the final note, the room erupted more applause than opening night, though the dissenters stayed silent. Ezra's chest heaved as he bowed, his eyes finding Marcus, then Caleb, then Warwick. The governor's face was still a mask, but his hands were clasped tightly, as if holding something back. Backstage, Marcus was waiting, his arms open. "You were incredible," he said, pulling Ezra into a hug. The warmth of it steadied Ezra's racing heart. And for a moment, he let himself believe everything would be okay. But then Caleb rushed in, his face pale. "Dad's outside," he said. "He's with those guys from the bar. They're mad." "Easy." Ezra's blood ran cold. He followed Caleb to the theater's side exit, where Tom stood with a group of men, their voices loud and slurred. "You think you can just parade around like that?" Tom shouted when he saw Ezra. "You're tearing this family apart." The men behind him jeered, one stepping forward with a clenched fist. Ezra froze, but Marcus stepped in front of him, his voice calm but firm. "Back off. He's not hurting anyone." Tom's eyes narrowed. "Who the hell are you?" "Someone who sees your son for who he is," Marcus said. "Maybe you should try it." The standoff was cut short by Ms. Clara, who stormed out with security volunteers. The men dispersed, grumbling, but Tom's glare lingered on Ezra, a promise of more to come. As the crowd thinned, Governor Warwick approached, Nathan Cole at his side. "You've got a gift, Ezra," Warwick said, his tone softer than before. "But you're stirring things up. Be careful who you trust." Ezra met his gaze, his voice steady. "I'm not afraid of you." Warwick's lips twitched, almost a smile. "You should be." The night air was thick with the threat of rain as Ezra, Marcus, and Lila left the theater. Caleb had slipped away to avoid their father, leaving Ezra with a pang of guilt. He'd wanted to protect his brother, but instead, he'd dragged him into this mess. Marcus's hand brushed his, a quiet reassurance. But Ezra's mind was racing. Warwick's words, his father's anger. The petition, it was all spiraling. And he was at the center. They stopped at the coffee shop, now quiet after the festival's chaos. Lila ordered coffees while Marcus sat close to Ezra, his presence a steady anchor. "You were fearless tonight," Marcus said. "I've seen a lot of performers. But you're something else." Ezra managed a weak smile. "I don't feel fearless. I feel like I just lit a match in a room full of gasoline." "Maybe you did," Marcus said. "But sometimes that's what it takes to change things." Lila returned, sliding into the booth. "Okay, so what's the plan?" "Warwick's got his attack dog Cole filming you. Your dad's out here acting like a caveman, and half the town's ready to burn you at the stake. We need a strategy." Ezra stared into his coffee, the steam curling like his thoughts. "I don't know. Keep singing. Hope people listen." "That's a start," Lila said. "But we need to get ahead of this. Cole's probably editing that footage to make you look like some kind of threat. We need to tell your story first." Marcus nodded. "I know some folks in Atlanta, bloggers, activists. They'd love to share what you're doing here. Show the world Willow Creek's got a star, not a scandal." The idea sparked something in Ezra, but it also terrified him. Going public meant more eyes, more judgment. He thought of the teenager's message, of Caleb's quiet pride, of Marcus's belief in him. "Okay," he said finally. "Let's do it." The next morning, Lila and Marcus helped Ezra draft a post for X, sharing his story in his own words, why he sang, what the music meant, how it felt to stand on that stage and be himself. They included a clip of his performance, his voice soaring over Let It Go. Within hours, the post was gaining traction, shared by accounts far beyond Willow Creek. Messages poured in support, love, stories from others who'd felt invisible. But there were hate comments too, venomous and sharp. Ezra's phone buzzed with a text from Caleb. "Saw your post. It's awesome. Dad's not happy, but I'm with you." The words were a lifeline, but they also reminded Ezra of the cost. He hadn't spoken to his father since the confrontation, and the silence was deafening. That afternoon, Marcus took Ezra to a quiet park outside town, a place where they could talk without eyes on them. Under the shade of an oak tree, Marcus opened up about his own life coming out in high school, finding a community in Atlanta, building a space for artists like Ezra. "I know what it's like to feel alone," he said. "But you're not. Not anymore." Ezra looked at him, the sunlight catching the warmth in Marcus's eyes. Without thinking, he leaned in, and Marcus met him halfway. Their kiss was soft, tentative, then deepening with a rush of something Ezra hadn't felt in years: hope. When they pulled back, Marcus smiled. "I've been wanting to do that since the fair." Ezra laughed, his heart lighter than it had been in days. But the moment was fleeting. His phone buzzed with a news alert. Governor Warwick had released a statement, calling Ezra's performance a distraction from the real issues facing Georgia. The statement mentioned inappropriate displays and hinted at stricter festival regulations. Lila called, her voice urgent. Cole posted the video. "It's edited to make you look like you're mocking the town. They're using it to push the bill." Ezra's chest tightened. He opened the video, wincing as it cut between his performance and shots of angry locals, with Warwick's voiceover about protecting values. It was a lie, but a convincing one. "We need to fight back," Lila said. "There's a rally tomorrow, outside the community center. People are coming to support you." "Easy. Diane's organizing. MS. Clara's spreading the word. You in?" Ezra hesitated, the weight of it all pressing down. But Marcus squeezed his hand, and Ezra thought of the teenager's message, of Caleb, of the boy he'd been, singing into a hairbrush, dreaming of a world that would let him shine. "I'm in," he said. The rally was small but fierce, a mix of locals and outsiders holding signs. "Love is love. Let Ezra sing." Diane spoke first, her voice shaking but strong, followed by MS. Clara, who called Ezra the soul of this town. When it was Ezra's turn, he climbed onto a makeshift stage, his heart pounding. He didn't have a speech prepared, so he sang instead a cappella. Reflection, his voice carrying over the crowd. As he sang, he saw Marcus beaming, Lila cheering, Caleb watching from the edge. But he also saw Nathan Cole, filming again, and a group of counter-protesters, their signs quoting scripture. The fault line was cracking, and Ezra was standing on it. The rally's energy lingered in Ezra's bones as he walked home, Marcus and Lila flanking him like guards. The crowd had dispersed, but their voices echoed in his mind, support and hate intertwined, a reminder of the battle he'd unwittingly started. He hadn't planned to be a symbol, but here he was, and there was no going back. At Lila's apartment, they watched the rally footage spread online, shared by allies and twisted by opponents. Marcus's contacts in Atlanta amplified Ezra's story, and by morning, a small news outlet had picked it up, calling him the voice of a new Georgia. But the attention came with a cost. His phone buzzed with threats, anonymous and cruel, and a new petition demanded the festival cancel all non-traditional performances. Caleb showed up at the coffee shop, his face drawn. "Dad saw the rally on TV. He said, he's not okay. Said he's done with you." Ezra's heart sank, but he nodded. "I figured. Thanks for telling me." Caleb hesitated, then hugged him, quick and fierce. "You're my brother. I don't care what he says." The words carried Ezra through the day, but the tension was mounting. The festival board was meeting that evening to discuss the petitions. And MS. Clara warned him they might cancel his future performances. "Warwick's leaning on them," she said. "He's got influence, and he's not afraid to use it." Ezra felt the walls closing in, but Marcus had an idea. "Let's make a video," he said. "You, singing, talking about why this matters. We'll post it before the board decides. Show them you're not just a controversial person." They filmed in Lila's apartment, the lights soft through the windows. Ezra sang "Part of Your World," his voice raw with emotion, then spoke directly to the camera. "I'm not trying to change anyone's beliefs," he said. I just want to sing. To be me. If that scares you, I'm sorry. But I'm not going away. The video went viral, shared thousands of times. Messages flooded in, from kids who saw themselves in Ezra to parents who wanted a better world for their children. But the board's decision loomed, and Ezra couldn't shake the fear that he'd lose the one place where he'd found his voice. That night, the theater was packed for the board meeting. Ezra sat in the back with Marcus, Lila, and Caleb, his heart in his throat. The board president, a stern woman named Mrs. Langley, read the petitions aloud, her voice neutral. Then she opened the floor. Diane spoke first, her voice steady. Ezra's performance was art, not politics. Banning him would be banning creativity, banning truth. A man from the counter-protesters stood, his face red. This is a family event. We don't need boys in dresses confusing our kids. The room erupted, arguments flying. Ezra's hands shook, but Marcus squeezed his knee, grounding him. Then, to everyone's shock, Governor Warwick stood. The room fell silent. I came to Willow Creek to listen, Warwick said, his voice calm but commanding. I've heard a lot: anger, fear, but also hope. Ezra Kane's performance stirred something in this town. And in me. He paused, his eyes finding Ezra's. I've spent my career fighting for what I thought was right. But tonight, I'm not so sure. The crowd gasped. Warwick stepped down from the podium and approached Ezra, extending a hand. You've got courage, son. More than I did at your age. Ezra took his hand, his heart racing. The room was frozen, every eye on them. Warwick turned to the board. Let him sing. Let him be. The board voted to keep Ezra's performances. The decision met with cheers and boos. As the meeting ended, Warwick pulled Ezra aside. I can't promise this bill will die, he said quietly. But you've made me think. That's a start. Ezra nodded, too stunned to speak. Outside, Marcus pulled him into a hug, Lila and Caleb joining in. The rain had finally come, soft and cleansing, washing away some of the weight on Ezra's shoulders. Months later, Ezra moved to Atlanta, where he joined Marcus's music program, singing at open mic nights and finding a community that embraced him. The bill passed, but with amendments that softened its impact, thanks to voices like Ezra's. He never reconciled with his father, but Caleb visited often, and their bond grew stronger. Ezra never forgot that night in Willow Creek, when he sang like a princess and the governor took his hand. It wasn't a fairy tale ending, but it was a beginning one where he could finally be himself, unapologetically, in a world that was learning to listen.